Now on Toledo News this morning, Election Day 2022. It's only 3 days away. This morning on Toledo News this morning, guiding you through this consequential midterm election, as Ohioans and Americans across the country make their voices heard at the polls. Many voted early, but many will be carrying out their civic duty on Tuesday. What do you need to know to make an informed decision? What's the latest analysis? Answers to those questions and total You Decide 2022 coverage on this Saturday, November 5th, 2022. Good Saturday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and thanks for starting your weekend with Toledo News this morning. Election Day is now only 3 days away, and this morning, I'm getting you prepared for what will be a busy next few days. If you want to avoid the Election Day crowd, early voting will be happening Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. and Monday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Lucas County Shared Services Building, which is located at 3737 West Sylvania Avenue. So what's on the ballot? There are two big races here in the state of Ohio. One to fill the seat of outgoing Senator Rob Portman, which includes Democrat Tim Ryan and Republican J.D. Vance, as well as the gubernatorial race, incumbent Governor Mike DeWine, as well as Democrat Nan Whaley. Youngstown area Representative Tim Ryan, a Democrat, has focused his campaign on bringing manufacturing back to Ohio, as well as the state's middle class. That's as his opponent, venture capitalist J.D. Vance, hones in on inflation and crime, two big issues being touted by Republican candidates nationwide. In the race for governor, incumbent Mike DeWine has focused his campaign around the big gains his administration has made in the manufacturing sector, which includes the big Intel project right outside of Columbus. Meanwhile, Democrat and former Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, his opponent, has focused a lot of her speeches on the questionable actions of Governor DeWine's administration, such as the first energy bailout, as well as abortion rights. So you've likely had the opportunity to hear from your candidates, or even meet them, but there are plenty of issues on the ballot that you're also going to have to look out for. So let's start with one of the biggest issues on the ballot. Issue 11, the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library's 3.7 mil renewal, which is not a new tax. The levy represents more than half of the library's operating budget, which is renewed every 5 years. Jason Kuchma, Executive Director and Fiscal Officer for the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library, says that the library has a goal of getting 95% of residents connected with the library card, saying that number currently sits at about 70%. He notes that the county library system receives millions of visitors each year. Now to the Imagination Station's Issue 10. The levy is county-wide and not a new tax. The levy costs the owner of a $100,000 home $5.21 a year and supports free admission on Saturdays for Lucas County kids, as well as discounts on films and other experiences at the Science Center. Imagination Station CEO Lori Hauser says that even if you don't have a child or experience what the Science Center has to offer on a consistent basis, there's something for everybody, from educator training to movie nights for adults to even in-school educational programming. Finally, let's break down Metro Parks Toledo's Issue 7. It's a 0.9 mil 10-year renewal levy. The levy costs the owner of a $100,000 home $2.08 per month. According to Joan Coase, a volunteer with the Citizens Campaign for Metro Parks, this is not a new or increased tax. Coase is passionate about getting out and exploring the benefits of our 19 Metro Parks across the county. Now to a race that has seemingly gotten more competitive by the day, Ohio's 9th Congressional District race, featuring incumbent Marcy Kaptur and Republican J.R. Majewski. The race has mostly been an easy win for Democrats, but due to this year's redrawn challenge of a district, Congresswoman Kaptur, who has been in office since 1983, is being forced to run advertisement after advertisement. Kaptur's ad buys have put an emphasis on safety, with commercials featuring law enforcement and even one that paints Majewski as an extremist, who doesn't belong in elected office. Meanwhile, Majewski has focused his campaign on the economy and soaring inflation. He's making the case that Kaptur has been in office for too long, and Ohio 9 is in need of desperate change. Now, while that congressional race is surely getting a lot of attention, there are plenty of races on the state level as well. You can view interviews with those candidates by visiting the Community Focus playlist right here on YouTube. It will not be a quiet day in terms of weather for sure. You can expect a high in the lower 70s and a low in the upper 40s. There is the possibility of showers throughout today. The left lane is closed on I-75 in both directions between Ottawa River Road and I-280 due to barrier wall repair. Work wraps up in mid-November. Election Day is Tuesday, and joining me right now is Dr. Melissa Miller, Professor of Political Science at BGSU. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So what are you expecting for election night here in the state of Ohio? Because we have a few big races from governor to Senate.
Well, there will be a lot of interest on Tuesday night. I think a lot of people will be turning into the news, turning to those news outlets, their favorite platform, their favorite website to figure out who is winning that U.S. Senate race. I think that's really where a lot of attention is going to be. There are also congressional races that will garner interest, but it's that marquee race at the top that everyone's going to be interested in, not just here in Ohio, but nationally, because that one race could decide whether Republicans or Democrats control the U.S. Senate beginning in January.
And leading up to Election Day, we had plenty of early voting happening. So what does that mean for Election Day and what we could see in the results?
I think what we're going to see is record turnout. Here in Ohio and elsewhere, what we're hearing is that the numbers are off the charts for early voting, exceeding early voting in the 2018 midterms, which was already high. You know, that was a pretty decent turnout in 2018. I think it will be even higher than that. And I think that's what the early vote suggests. A lot of interest in these midterm elections, which usually the turnout's rather low. I don't think that's going to be the case on Tuesday.
And for people who are, whether they're rooting on a particular candidate or a particular party, what is your message to them about what the results of this election could be? Because it's going to be a divided government regardless.
That's right. One thing I will say to the activists, the campaign volunteers, and the voters on either side is if you haven't cast your vote yet, you still have time. And because there's a close race here in Ohio, and in some cases more than one, there's a Cincinnati congressional district that's considered a toss-up. I mean, we've got a couple of congressional races that are very close, but certainly the U.S. Senate race is very close. So volunteers, activists, voters on either side, if you feel passionate, you don't want to have regret on Wednesday morning that it all came down to one vote. Now, the odds of that happening, of course, are pretty slim. But, you know, if you want your candidate to win and you feel passionately, there's time between now and Election Day, and certainly on Election Day, to vote. Moving forward, I think people need to lower their expectations about any major policy changes in this country. The reason is, as you say, Jaden, we're going to have divided government. We will still have a Democratic president, and the U.S. House is almost certain to flip to the Republican side. And so even if the Democrats hold on to the U.S. Senate, we're going to have divided government with Democrats in control of just maybe one House of Congress and the presidency, and Republicans will be able to stop legislation by controlling, if they wish, by controlling the House of Representatives.
And that's definitely an important message. Go out and vote. Dr. Melissa Miller of BGSU, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And that's what you need to know this morning. Have a great weekend.